Has a memory ever flashed through your mind making you gasp? Am I really that old already? Things that used to be familiar, from how we listen to music, watch TV, to habits that seem like just yesterday, now suddenly become undeniable signs of middle age. In this video, let's look back at 25 things that instantly make you realize how fast time has flown. Struggling with tangled phone cords? Do you remember the days when communicating required patience and sometimes physical strength? Before mobile phones and cordless landlines became popular, everyone owned a landline phone, often a rotary phone or an early push-button type. No matter how careful you were, no matter how much you swore you would never twirl the receiver while talking, eventually that cord would get tangled into an inextricable mess. It was an essential part of life. Sometimes these cords were even stretched so far that you had to stand right against the wall while chatting. When you tried to untangle it, you had to smooth it out with your hands, twist it back, and stretch it. Furthermore, these old phones also demanded a good memory. To call someone, you had to dial the number from memory. Unless you carried a small address book or used a bulky phone book, you relied on your ability to remember long sequences of numbers. This is unlike today, where mobile phones have replaced both those tools and store hundreds of numbers with just one touch. The younger generation today probably doesn't understand the concept of the long, continuous dial tone signaling the line is ready. Paid long-distance calls. Imagine a world where calling grandparents in another state or friends who moved far away was a financial decision that required careful consideration. That was the reality for those who grew up before the mobile era. Today, mobile phones have completely replaced that outdated system. Most mobile plans or even internet calling apps offer unlimited nationwide calls for the same fixed monthly price. But in the 80s and before, long-distance calling was a luxury item. You had to be conscious of every minute ticking by because every second meant the bill would increase. Long-distance calls were often charged at expensive rates, especially if you called during the daytime. Families often had to wait until off-peak hours in the evening or weekends to make important calls to save money. If you were a teenager wanting to talk to a girlfriend in another city, you had to make a silent bargain with your parents, or be ready to face their wrath when the phone bill arrived. The feeling of anxiety as the clock ticked and you knew you had exceeded your budget is an unforgettable experience for the 80s generation. The disappearance of long-distance charges is one of the biggest changes, helping us realize we lived through a completely different era. Hitting the TV to see better. Let's remember the old, heavy box TVs, large pieces of furniture that were as heavy as a naval destroyer. They not only occupied a corner of the living room, but also required a special ritual whenever the signal was fuzzy. What was that ritual? It was hitting the sides or the top of the TV forcefully to try and regain a clear signal. We did that every day. The rough texture of the TV cabinet, the dry thud sound when your hand hit the wood or plastic layer. Amazingly, this actually worked. No one truly knew why applying physical force helped improve the image, but it was a universal and effective troubleshooting method at the time. When the image was full of static snow or the colors were jumbled, the first and almost instinctive reaction of any viewer from the 80s was to gently tap the device. These TVs were often old wooden console TVs. Next to them, there were often the necessary metal tables so you could eat dinner while watching your favorite show. Sometimes these tables were stored under the sofa or in the closet, or if your family was more sophisticated, you had a dedicated stand. But wherever they were, the ritual of hitting the TV was part of the entertainment life. The necessity of hitting the TV has disappeared entirely in the digital age. Today, flat, light TVs use digital signals. Either you have a clear signal or you have no signal at all. There is no slightly clear or slightly fuzzy. If the screen is faulty, you can't hit it. You can only call warranty service or buy a new one. Bunny ears antenna. Before cable television became common, the only way to watch TV channels was through wireless signal reception. This required a bunny ears antenna or a larger antenna mounted on the roof. The bunny ears antenna was usually placed right on top of or near the large box TVs. Adjusting them was an inexact art and science. When the signal started to degrade, often due to changing weather or a plane flying overhead, you had to wrestle with the antenna. And this is where the creativity of the 80s came into play. We often had to tape aluminum foil onto the bunny ears. The foil was rolled into a cone shape or taped flat onto the antenna tips in the hope that it would help catch the signal better. Miraculously, sometimes it worked. If the indoor antenna wasn't enough, you had to invest in a large antenna on the roof. Installing and adjusting this antenna was a complicated job, sometimes requiring one person on the roof spinning the antenna, while another person yelled from downstairs to signal if the picture was clearer. Both the bunny ears and the rooftop antenna are symbols of the era when we had to manage technology ourselves. Additionally, for those who owned VCRs in the 80s, connecting it to the TV was also a technical challenge. You needed a device called an RF modulator to connect the VCR to the TV. If you are an antique enthusiast, you might have seen it again, but for most people, it has completely disappeared. Leaded gasoline and cheap prices. Back then, besides self-service stations, there were also many full-service gas stations. At these full-service stations, you just needed to stop the car, roll down the window, and an attendant would come to serve you. They would pump the gas for you, check the oil, windshield washer fluid, and even clean the windshield. In the past, we bought leaded gasoline. Although lead was used to improve engine performance, it has been gradually phased out globally due to serious concerns about air pollution and health hazards, especially since lead is a potent neurotoxin. And of course, the thing that makes us feel oldest when talking about gasoline is the price. Gas prices back then were much cheaper than they are now. You could fill up a muscle car with less than $10. This figure is almost unbelievable for today's generation, as fuel costs have skyrocketed. The combination of attentive service, a toxic fuel type, and super cheap prices created a completely different image of daily memories together. Saturday morning cartoons. If you were a child of the 80s, you understood the sacred meaning of Saturday morning. That was the time that children eagerly awaited most during the week. Why? Because it was the only time to watch favorite cartoon series on the major networks. Watching TV was considered a community ritual. Children often woke up early, turned on the TV, and ate sugary cereal while watching the continuously broadcasted shows. The feeling of sitting comfortably in pajamas without worrying about school or homework and enjoying colorful stories was an essential element of childhood during that era. At that time, VCRs were not common. That meant watching network TV had to happen at specific times. If you were busy enough to forget to turn on the TV or were dragged along shopping by your parents, you would miss the show. There were no on-demand streaming services like Netflix or Disney Plus to rewatch entire seasons anytime. The tradition of Saturday morning cartoons has become a thing of the past. Since at least 2004, the three major American networks have stopped broadcasting cartoon programs under this model. The advent of Cartoon Network, DVDs, and later streaming platforms made Saturday morning cartoons obsolete. Chickenpox parties. This is perhaps one of the child-rearing customs that the younger generation today will find most astonishing. In the 70s and early 80s, before the chickenpox vaccine became widely available, many parents organized chickenpox parties for their children. However, don't think of these parties with birthday cakes, paper hats, or fun games. It wasn't like that at all. The purpose of a chickenpox party was to bring children together so they would intentionally catch chickenpox early. The logic behind this was that most people contracted chickenpox, and generally contracting the disease in childhood was much milder than contracting it as an adult. So how did a chickenpox party happen? Usually children would be taken to visit a child who currently had chickenpox. Parents would try to introduce the virus to their children through contact. This could be as simple as touching the sick child. If your child couldn't attend, sometimes parents would visit themselves, then bring the virus home for their child to be exposed. It sounds strange, but for parents at the time, this was a practical strategy. It allowed them to control when their children got sick and recovered, in order to get this over with at a convenient time for the family, rather than the illness appearing unexpectedly during Christmas or another important event. Baby Jessica is grown up. There are news stories that make the whole country, and even the world, hold its breath and glue its eyes to the TV screen. The story of baby Jessica was one of the biggest, a major news event in October 1987. Baby Jessica McClure, then only 18 months old, fell down a 22-foot well in Midland, Texas. The entire campaign to rescue her became a non-stop, 56-hour reality TV show, drawing the attention and prayers of millions. The whole world watched as rescue teams dug the earth and tried to reach the little girl. Ultimately, Jessica was successfully rescued. Look at the time that has passed since that shocking event. Jessica, once a symbol of global hope and concern, is now 37 years old. She is married and is the mother of 2 children, one 15 and one 13 years old. The news event we anxiously and emotionally followed years ago is now so distant that its main character has no memory whatsoever of the terrifying incident. Going to the record store. In the age before digital music downloads and streaming, finding music was a physical experience. Older individuals will recall the joy of spending hours at record stores. This was not just a shopping destination, it was a cultural gathering place where you searched for your favorite band, discovered new artists, or hunted for the latest hit. Previously, even large retail chains like Target, Kmart, and Walmart had separate music sections. However, with the popularity of digital download options and subsequently streaming services, specialized music stores have almost completely disappeared. What the digital download generation can never understand is the sensory experience of buying an album. It is the smell of the album when you first open it. The smell of new cardboard, vinyl, or cassette tape, a distinctive aroma associated with the joy of musical discovery. We remember flipping through shelves of vinyl records or cassette tapes, checking the back of the album cover for the track list and artist photos. It was a time-consuming process, but it was part of the connection to the music. Renting VHS at the store? In the 80s, Friday or Saturday night, home entertainment did not involve scrolling through complicated app interfaces. Instead, it was a trip to the video rental store. This was an important part of the entertainment routine for many families. These stores were often large chains like Blockbuster or local shops stocked with thousands of VHS tapes. You had to walk through the aisles, examine the large box covers of the tapes, read the synopsis, and try to find out if the latest release was still available on the shelf. Renting a movie was a commitment. You had to choose a movie, often a debated decision among family members. Then you had to ensure the tape was rewound before returning it. And most importantly, you had to return it on time to avoid expensive late fees. These were challenges and responsibilities that modern entertainment consumers do not face. However, with the rise of streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Disney+, this era has ended. Now we can watch almost any movie or TV show instantly without leaving the sofa, without worrying about rewinding tapes or late fees. Recording music from the radio onto cassette tape. Before digital editing tools, before the ability to download or stream any song you wanted, creating a personal music collection was an endeavor that required ingenuity, patience, and especially perfect timing. The most common method for music lovers to create mixtapes was to record directly from the radio onto cassette tapes. This was a challenging process. You had to sit next to your cassette player, ready in record mode, and eagerly await your favorite song to be broadcast on the radio. When the song started, you had to quickly press the record button. The difference between a perfect recording and a ruined one lay in just a fraction of a second. Many factors could spoil your mixtape. Maybe the DJ talked too much right during the introduction of the song, or sometimes you might accidentally press the wrong button, ruining the recording. You even had to accept that commercials might cut into the middle of the song if you weren't fast enough. But when you completed a perfect mixtape, a collection of songs arranged by mood, or dedicated to a special someone that was a source of personal pride. Now this is completely obsolete. Digital music and streaming platforms like Spotify or YouTube allow users to create playlists with just a few clicks. You can choose the order, the perfect sound quality, and never have to worry about the DJ ruining the recording. Which of these lost entertainment experiences reminds you most of your youth? Share below. Using the library card catalog. In the era before the internet and digital databases, finding books in the library was an old-school hunt that required using the physical card catalog. This was a massive system consisting of hundreds, perhaps thousands of small wooden drawers, each filled with thin index cards. Every book in the library had a set of index cards, organized by title, author, and subject. To find a specific book, you had to go to the card catalog area, pull out the drawer containing the first letter of the title or author's name, and flip through the paper cards. On each card, you would find essential information such as the title, author, and most importantly, the call number, a code that pinpointed the exact location of the book on the shelf. The physical act of pulling out a heavy drawer, the rattling sound of the cards, and the smell of old paper in the library are memories the modern generation lacks. This process could be quite time-consuming, especially if you weren't sure exactly what you were looking for. Carrying paper maps. Remember the days when driving to a foreign city was a test of navigation skills and patience? Before GPS and digital map applications, finding your way required relying on physical tools, paper maps, atlases, or in the late 80s and 90s, printing directions from a computer. Carrying paper maps was an indispensable part of every long journey. These maps were often very large, difficult to unfold and difficult to fold back correctly, especially while driving. You had to stop by the side of the road or ask your passenger to be the navigator trying to read the small lines and symbols. The pressure on the navigator was enormous. Misreading a turn could lead you astray for miles. The bulky atlases were an improvement, but they still required flipping back and forth between pages to follow the route. When home computers became more common, a new method emerged: printing turn-by-turn directions. These detailed printouts, often taped to the dashboard, were a major improvement. But if you missed a turn, the entire plan fell apart, and you had to find a public phone to call home or start over. 35mm film camera. In the modern world of smartphone cameras and unlimited cloud storage, taking pictures with a 35mm film camera is something only nostalgia enthusiasts do. However, in the 80s, it was completely normal. Film cameras required users to manually adjust settings such as aperture and shutter speed, depending on the type of camera. More importantly, each film roll could only take a limited number of pictures, usually 24 or 36 exposures. This created significant caution before pressing the shutter button. You had to think carefully about the composition and the moment, because every click was a cost. But the thing that made this experience most different was the wait. After the film roll was finished, you had to take it to the store for developing. This process could take several days, sometimes even weeks. The feeling of eagerness mixed with anxiety while waiting for the photos to return is a lost emotion. You didn't know if the photo was overexposed, blurry, or even if someone had their eyes closed until you held the printed photos in your hand. Digital cameras and smartphones have completely eliminated this process. They offer the ability to instantly preview photos, nearly unlimited storage, and the ability to share photos in seconds. Using typewriters. Before personal computers and word processing software dominated every office and home, typewriters were the common tool for creating documents. They were the standard in offices, schools, and even at home. Typewriters operated based on a physical mechanism. Every time you pressed a key, a metal bar struck an ink ribbon and imprinted a permanent character onto the paper. The most notable feature of the typewriter was its permanence. There was no undo button. There was no option to delete completely. If you made a spelling mistake or a typo, correction was complicated. You had to use correction tape or correction fluid, then carefully type the character again. Generally, you often had to start the entire page over. The noisy clack, clack, clack of the keys and the ding of the bell signaling the end of the line were characteristic sounds of the office or classroom environment back then. The advent of computers and word processing software replaced typewriters with much more advanced features. What is one thing from the 80s you wish you could bring back? Let us know what you want to see in the next video. Floppy disks. For those who started using computers in the 80s and 90s, floppy disks were the standard for storing and transferring digital data. The name floppy seems ironic, as they were usually protected by a hard plastic casing, but their core storage material was flexible. Floppy disks came in various sizes. Initially, there were the larger 5.25-inch disks, followed by the more compact and popular 3.5-inch disks, which had a protective metal slider on the outside. The feeling of inserting the disk into the drive and hearing the crrr sound of the computer reading the data was a familiar experience. However, floppy disks had severe limitations. They had very limited storage capacity. For example, a 3.5-inch disk only stored about 1.44 megabytes, a number that is almost meaningless in today's data world. To store a large file, you often had to split it across multiple disks. More importantly, floppy disks were very easily damaged. Just a small stain, nearby magnetic force, or a slight bend could render the data unrecoverable. Losing a floppy disk meant losing your work. Floppy disks have been completely replaced by much more efficient storage solutions. USB flash drives and cloud services offer thousands of times more storage capacity and are much more reliable. Attending aerobics class. The 1980s were not just a time of new technology, but also an era of vibrant and energetic aesthetic fitness. Exercise shifted from rudimentary gyms to high-energy group aerobics classes. Classes like jazzercise became extremely fashionable, attracting millions of people. Group aerobics was a cultural phenomenon, known for loud music, fast rhythms, and coordinated movements. But what made it most memorable was the accompanying fashion. Participants often wore multicolored unitards, tights, and especially brightly colored leg warmers, often neon. Hair was styled big and tied with headbands. This was a bold and dynamic fashion statement, reflecting the lively style of that decade. The popularity of group aerobics has gradually declined. Although aerobics still exists, it no longer holds the dominant position and is no longer accompanied by the dazzling fashion style of the 80s. It is a memory of an age when workout fashion was as bold as life itself. Watching movies at the drive-in theater. Before modern multiplex cinemas became common, the drive-in theater offered a unique entertainment experience. This was a place where you could enjoy the latest movie right in the comfort of your own car. The drive-in experience was very different. Audiences drove into a large parking lot, facing a giant screen. The sound was usually transmitted through a small, bulky speaker attached to the car window. It was an ideal place for romantic dates or a fun outing for the whole family. However, the popularity of drive-in theaters has severely declined. Their collapse was due to a combination of economic and technological factors. High land costs in urban areas made maintaining a large parking lot financially unfeasible. Furthermore, fierce competition from modern indoor cinemas and the financial requirement to convert to digital projection technology caused many drive-ins to close. Although a few drive-in theaters still operate as a nostalgic touch, they are no longer common and an essential part of entertainment culture as they were in the 80s. Pac-Man is 43 years old. For anyone who grew up in the 80s, Pac-Man is an iconic name in video games. This game was not just a pastime, it created an entire cultural phenomenon known as Pac-Man fever. Pac-Man, the famous arcade game, debuted in May 1980. This simple yet addictive game where you control Pac-Man eating dots and avoiding the four ghosts Blinky, Pinky, Inky, and Clyde became an essential part of the arcade centers at the mall. These arcades were once filled with noisy machines playing classic games. What instantly makes us feel old is looking at the actual number. Pac-Man is now 43 years old. This is a shocking fact. To put this number into context, Pac-Man is the same age John F. Kennedy was when he became president. The fact that a revolutionary video game that shaped the childhood of an entire generation is now considered an antique and has entered middle age is a powerful reminder of the passage of time. The children who used to spend coins playing Pac-Man in arcades are now older adults. Star Wars items becoming antiques. The 70s and 80s were the golden age of the Star Wars franchise, especially with the release of The Empire Strikes Back in 1980 and Return of the Jedi in 1983. These films created a huge demand for merchandise, and Star Wars toys and Halloween costumes became the most sought-after items. The toys and costumes we once played with or wore as children are now more than just mementos. They have become collectible items with high value. Especially if they are intact, unopened, their value can reach thousands of dollars. Realizing that the plastic toys we used to destroy as children are now carefully preserved in collectors' display cases is clear evidence of the passage of time. It's not just a change in monetary value, it's a change in status. A common children's toy is now an antique. The memory of eagerly wearing a Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader costume for Halloween, or spending hours playing with the action figures is now contrasted with the reality that those items can be considered an investment. John Candy has been deceased for 29 years. John Candy was an indispensable face in 80s cinema. He was a beloved comedian, starring in many hit films such as National Lampoon's Vacation, Splash, Uncle Buck, The Great Outdoors, and most famously Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. His acting career began in 1973, and he brought countless laughs and memorable characters to audiences. What makes many feel deeply older is the truth about his death. John Candy passed away in 1994 at the age of 43. When we look back at those movies, we still see him in the prime of his career. However, the truth is that he has been gone for 29 years. This period is longer than his entire acting career. That is a powerful contrast regarding the passage of time. A period longer than the time he spent creating the works we still love and re-watch. It makes us realize that a new generation of audiences has grown up without the chance to see new works by John Candy, and our memories of him are now a part of film history. Back to the Future. The movie Back to the Future is one of the greatest cinematic works to emerge from the 80s. The original film was released in 1985, taking us back in time to 1955. However, it is part 2 of the film, released in 1989, that makes us feel the cruel passage of time. In Back to the Future, Part 2, the main character Marty McFly took a trip to a future that, at the time, felt very distant. That future was the year 2015. The movie created an exciting vision of 2015, a world full of incredible technologies. We saw things like hoverboards, self-lacing shoes, and 3D movie advertisements. In 1989, when the movie premiered, 2015 seemed like a distant horizon, a technological milestone that an entire generation eagerly awaited. The funny thing and the biggest age shock is the fact that 2015 is now the past. At the time the movie was released, imagining the future was certainly difficult. But now, the difficult thing is looking back and realizing how long ago those classic films were released. Daniel-san is older than Mr. Miyagi. And here is the final thing that should shock you about the relentless speed of time. Comparing the ages of the actors from the classic film The Karate Kid. The original movie premiered in 1984, telling the story of Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio, trained by the wise teacher Mr. Miyagi, played by Pat Morita. This is a story of coming of age and martial arts spirit. When the original film was released, Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, was 52 years old in real life. He was the epitome of wisdom, patience, and experience. Now look at Ralph Macchio. When the series Cobra Kai premiered in 2018, Ralph Macchio was 56 years old in real life. The undeniable fact that makes us feel older is that Ralph Macchio, the young Daniel-san we watched, is now older than Sensei Mr. Miyagi was when the original story began. This age role reversal is a clear reminder that we have been through many decades. The actor who played the student is now older than the actor who played the wise teacher of yesteryear. Actual product might not have fulfilled the promise of a joyful pet family. They created a lasting cultural phenomenon, providing a means for children to interact with the world of microscopic biology. Their enduring popularity proves that the concept of instant life was an extremely powerful marketing idea in the minds of children. Thank you so much for watching until this very moment. If this trip down memory lane brought a smile to your face and evoked cherished memories, don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons for Back to Yesterday so we can continue to revisit beautiful memories together.